Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. This is our second episode. I am your host, your moderator for tonight, Glenn Craig. And our panel tonight is Kyle Prevost, Miranda Marquette, Peter Anderson, and Tom Drake. And what we want to discuss is college. Is it worth it? So let's take a look at this stat here. According to the Wall Street Journal, the average debt of grads in 2014 is about $33,000. In Canada, not as much, but still bad. It's about $26,000. So adjusting for inflation, that's about double the amount the students had in debt 20 years ago. So kids are graduating these days with a lot of debt compared to what they're making and how much money they have and whatnot. So the question is college still worth it for students? Thoughts?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start out with the Economic Policy Institute in Washington just analyzed some Department of Labor statistics and saw that Americans with a four-year college degree make 98% more per hour on average, and this is for 2013, than people without a degree. So on average, in 2013, if you had a four-year degree in the United States, you made on average 98% more than your counterpart without a degree. So so the Economic Policy Institute is saying that it's still worth it to go ahead and get that degree because you'll make more money.
So I warned these guys. I said, I'm going to chime in. I'll be the devil's advocate tonight. In writing for the book, I came across some interesting stats. And like, you'll find a lot of stuff put out by some smart people that have similar numbers to what Miranda says. In Canada, we like to call it the $1 million promise, where if you have a university degree over the course of your lifetime, you're supposed to make $1 million more than someone without one, with just a high school education. But there's two major errors in how that information is reported. One is that the cost of going to school is not just the tuition. There's also your opportunity cost, essentially. So you've taken 4, 5, 6 years out of your work life to pursue education. You still get some work in the summers. If you're lucky enough to do a co-op program, you might be able to cut that down a little bit. But there's an opportunity cost to going to college. And two, the debt statistics that are currently reported, so okay, you make that much more, but your debt statistics are often skewed because they only measure government debt. Now, the second part of this is, and I was discussing this before, is there's no control group for this. So in other words, we don't track people that could have got into college but didn't go. If we track that group of people that were smart enough to get into university or college and seen how they did in entrepreneurship or how they did wherever they went, one, I think, could hypothesize pretty strongly that they would already out-earn the average high schooler by quite a lot. So it's difficult to get like a scientifically accurate portrait of what your return on investment actually is, and if the debt is worth it.
That is interesting. Who puts these stats together? It's somebody's interest at hand. People want you to go to college, but if it's backed by universities and people who are giving the loans, you have to sort of question some of the stats as well.
Right, and one of the interesting things is that Kyle has brought up in the past is sometimes it's more about your skills as well. A couple years ago, Georgetown University's Center for Education in the Workforce did a study that showed that about 30% of Americans with associate's degrees make more than those with bachelor's degrees because they're going in and they're learning these skills that keep them, that help them learn something that people want to pay for, like right now. When you get a four-year degree, kind of a traditional liberal arts type four-year degree, you're not coming out, unless you're in a STEM field, you're not coming out with like a skill. You're coming out with kind of theoretical knowledge. So unless you've done an internship or you've had a specific kind of degree, you don't have the skill that people are willing to pay for. So I thought that was kind of interesting that kind of these 2-year degrees, these associate degrees are becoming a little bit more, it's kind of that compromise between getting your 4-year degree and not going to school, I guess.
And I think that point you make about having STEM degrees, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degrees, versus having an arts and humanities degree, it's really going to make a big difference as far as your ROI on a per school basis. So the STEM degrees, by and large, you're probably going to get a pretty decent return on your investment when you go and get your degree. You're getting specialized skills, and you're going into a field that's relatively high paying as well, and you're going to be able to pay back those loans, no problem. Problem comes in with a lot of these people who are getting the arts and humanities degrees, and the return on their investment really isn't going to be as good, especially if they're going to a higher dollar school. I saw something in the pay scale study that talked about how those arts and humanities degrees have a less rosy picture there. They had 153 arts degrees in the pay scale study, and 46 of them generated a return on investment worse than putting your money in a 20-year treasury bill. And of those, 18 offered returns that were worse than 0. So I think a really big part of it depends on what kind of a degree you're getting, what kind of specialized skills you're getting, and what kind of a salary you can expect to see in that field afterwards. So
those are good points. And I think maybe also part of the equation there, I don't know if that's in that pay scale article, is what school you're going to get these degrees. If you're going to a high-end school and you're going to end up with 6-figure debt to get this degree in a job that may not cover that right off the bat, is that necessarily better than going to maybe a state or local school where your tuition is going to be significantly less and it's easier to reach that ROI?
Yeah, I always tell a story of my friend who went to an out-of-state school, very expensive private school, to get his art degree. And he ended up with $75,000 worth of debt at this school, and he wasn't able to find any kind of job in the arts fields after he graduated. So here he has $75,000 in debt and no income. He ended up actually going back to school again.
I knew it. I knew that was going to be the end of the story. I knew that's how it was going to end.
Getting a degree in the healthcare field, and now he makes really good money, and he's able to start paying off those bills. But he has, over $100,000 in debt now. So,
and
I think
he'd just gone into the medical field in the first place.
Exactly. His first love was the arts, but he just wasn't able to make enough money to live in that field. So.
And would you say that it's more because of the university or more because of the job?
What, as far as why he couldn't find a job, or?
Well, I mean, like that his situation. It was just that he couldn't find anything in his field, or that he was so inundated with the debt from going to that school.
It was a big part of it. Was the debt. I mean, I think he was able to find something, but it just didn't pay very much, which is a lot of time that's the case in the arts fields. So he wasn't. He was starting to fall behind, I think, on his student loan payments. $75,000. That's a pretty decent payment every month. So.
Mm-hmm. And I think that brings up an interesting point. When you're young, you're allowed to make mistakes because you can kind of overcome them pretty quickly financially, even debt, not investing, a whole bunch of different things. But when you have so much debt in the first place, so much is riding on that first job. You have to do something that will start paying off. You can't take that risk of maybe moving somewhere else and trying something, or finding a job that pays a little less and maybe you can move to something else. You need that money now, it sounds like.
Right.
I think a lot of the problem, too, is just career research. Like I've seen a lot of people go to school and they don't, they almost wait till they're done their education to see what's kind of out there for jobs. And you got to kind of predict in advance, but you need to go where the jobs are, and people rather pay for actual skills, like the trade schools, or even the 2-year associate's degree, like that was brought up. They want skills more than just education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was writing the book, I call it the Good Will Hunting Plan, just after one of my favorite movies. And basically, the idea is maybe 20 years ago, you might have had something if you said, what can you get out of going to university for an arts degree? And you'd say, well, you can get all these great learning opportunities. Where else are you exposed to it? However, with the internet now, my argument is, with a library pass, an Amazon Prime account, and a decent online book club, how much of the benefit can you get of an arts degree? And as someone with an arts degree, I would say it's got to be about 95% plus in most cases.
Right, but you don't have, but you might not. Sorry, I was just gonna say you may not have the qualification to like do what you're doing to like teach school. Nobody's gonna hire you to be a high school teacher without that degree, no matter how much.
So then that's where the designation comes in for professional designation of some kind. But if you're just going like in Pete's example, if you're going because your first love is arts, I would argue that university isn't even really a great place to indulge yourself in the arts. Like when you compare sort of the huge initial class sizes that most universities offer and the very static book selections and all the rest of it, I would argue that it's not even really a place full of passionate people that are all there for the love of the arts. So if you are going to school for the love of learning, there's, I think, better ways and better avenues to get that these days.
Yeah.
I agree with that completely. There are top places. Sorry.
Good
Go ahead, Peter.
No, there are a lot of places you can go to get free college-level courses taught online by the actual professors that are teaching these courses at the schools, at MIT, at Harvard, or wherever. There's a place called Coursera online that has college courses, Udacity, edX, and I'm sure there are several others as well.
Khan Academy is really good too.
Yeah.
Yep, and then iTunes has a ton of podcasts that you can listen to that are actual lectures and so forth. So if you're just looking to learn and educate yourself a little bit, there are a ton of ways to do it for free without having to get a $100,000 bill.
Most of the Ivy League now puts all of their first 2 years' worth of courses online. I know Princeton and Harvard do, in almost all their literature courses. So, I don't know. It's tough to argue with.
Now, do you think that the average person is able to be self-motivated enough to go through that type of an education on their own and go to the library and do that type of study? Sometimes going to the university, they teach you those things that you didn't even know you needed to know. And then there's all these other things like when you have an 18-credit course load, you start to learn to prioritize and you start to learn to organize. And these other skills that you're going to need in the workplace that might not be a specific course that you're taking, but that you need to have. So, I mean, does the university bring you those skills that the average person wouldn't get if they were studying online or at the library?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think in some ways the educational standards aren't even up to what they maybe used to be at the college level.
I guarantee you they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find my stat here, but I was reading somewhere. Okay, here it is. A federal survey showed that the literacy of college-educated citizens declined between 1992 and 2003. Only a quarter were deemed proficient, defined as using printed and written information to function in society, to achieve one's goals, and to develop one's knowledge and potential. So, of college graduates, only a quarter were deemed proficient. I mean, that's pretty sad. And it's gone down over the past, I mean, this is already 10 years old, the study that I was quoting from, but...
Oh, wow.
In Canada, in writing the book and in doing my own podcast, talking to some of the professors, there's a guy by the name of Ken Coates who's had like 40 years in academia, and he's put out a book called What to Consider When Considering University. And he calls the vast majority of university students today the swarm, and he says that somewhat derisively, because he says, however many years ago in Canada, 40 years ago, say 15% of the population roughly attended university. Now Canada has the highest post-secondary attendance rates on the planet, and that sounds great. Our politicians sometimes love to quote it. However, it's often mismatched to the job market. And his thing is, we get these middle-class people who are still pushing their kids into sort of plans that would have made sense for them. If they would have got a Bachelor of Arts degree, they would have been in middle management. They would have had all these opportunities. However, they're pushing them, or so they're sort of like directing them down a path to the job market of 1970, and it's 2014. So there's sort of a major misfit there, and it's resulting in a lot of classrooms full of misinterested kids and professors that sort of have no motivation to make them strive.
Well, and who are these professors also? A lot of your first couple of year classes aren't going to be these high-level doctors. They're going to be grad students. The kids who are barely a couple of years older than the people that they're teaching, too. So, I mean, maybe, there is some of that. They're just kind of teaching some basic stuff above what the textbook is telling you anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I mean, really, it's not that, all college is not worth it. I mean, I think what we're talking about is, what you choose to do and where you choose to go matters. I mean, I thought that graph, I don't know if, Peter, if you still have that graph and want to kind of put it up there. I think that was a really interesting, look at, your annualized return on investment. So I thought that was really interesting.
And I also saw some stats from I think the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying that the higher your degree, the better your protection from unemployment. So, I mean, just in general, you're going to have less of a chance of being unemployed by having a higher degree.
So maybe now that we've sort of bashed, and it's funny because how many of us, like, I know I have a Bachelor of Arts degree, Miranda, you have an arts background, like, do you guys have an arts background? Because it's sort of ironic. I always feel weird sitting here talking about how useless a BA is when I have a BA.
Yeah, no, I've got a communications degree as well. So,
right.
When I think about it, though, there isn't a lot that I learned in college, I don't think, that I couldn't have learned on my own. And I probably learned more on my own just by through experience. There's something to be said for on-the-job experience, learning things in the real practical world. I think a lot of times the college environment can be kind of an insular thing that doesn't directly correlate to a real-world work environment.
But I don't know, I guess at the same time, part of the college experience and where you go also is kind of your connections too. As has been pointed out to me quite a bit, I could do what I'm doing without, my communications degree and without my journalism degree. I could probably do what I'm doing. But at the same time, when I first started out, part of the benefit of going to my journalism program was I had all these contacts at different publications. And so I had one of my cohort, he worked at Discover Magazine. So when they were looking for somebody to provide some articles, he just hit me up. I mean, there was no, I didn't have to submit anything. I didn't have to try and submit a pitch or anything. He just contacted me because he knew me and knew this is what I was doing because of the connection that we made through going to university together. So I think part of the value in it is those connections that you make. I mean, it's easier now these days to make connections like online and through social media, but and maybe that shows how dated I am. I don't know, but when I was going, it was really helpful to make those connections in my program that could help my career when I got done. And you also have to look at the alumni networks. I mean, too, some schools have really strong alumni networks that can help you find better jobs later.
Yeah, like that's the argument for an MBA, right? It's not what you learn, it's who you meet. And I think that is probably the best argument for post-secondary and even private high school, secondary schooling. And sort of as a bit of a tangent, it's the argument I make to young gentlemen in Canada, because in Canadian universities, especially in arts programs, we're now up to 65 to 70% of university campuses being female. So I make the argument that by far the most valuable thing you will get out of a university experience is actually you'll learn how to talk to girls, because there's 2 of them for every 1 of you. And it's actually become the flip of the MRS degree. You can now go to school, get a bachelor's degree, so you can talk to girls about literature, and you'll be one of the few guys that can do that. And you're almost guaranteed to get dates where that was not the case years ago. So that is actually, if you look at it from return on investment, that's actually not a bad deal. It worked for me. I've got a teacher, a fiance, and I know a lot of other guys it's worked pretty well for.
That is definitely an interesting byproduct of college that I don't think most people would think of.
Learning to talk to girls, I like it.
But,
I learned lots of practical skills, how much beer I could drink and how to talk to girls.
There certainly is a social aspect of going to college, too. That's just you're not going to get that in the same way if you're at home doing your own thing, learning on your own. You're not going to be on the campus. You're not going to be in clubs. You're not going to be in the fraternity, sorority. So you do miss out on that if you try to come up with some alternative to your education.
And there are ways. I mean, if you want that practical experience, you could get an internship. I mean, I had an internship for my bachelor's degree, and then I had another one for my master's degree. So I think if you can show that you are getting that practical, marketable experience, you can make your college, your university experience just a little bit more valuable if you're worried about it.
One problem that I've seen with the whole college experience is just how few people are actually graduating with a degree. They're getting all the debt, but they're not getting the degree at the end. The 6-year graduation rate for 4-year institutions is only 59%.
Ouch.
And when you look at people that have graduated, a report by McKinsey found that 42% of recent graduates are in jobs that require less than a 4-year degree. And then 41% of graduates from the nation's top colleges could not find jobs in their chosen field either. So even when people are graduating with a degree, a lot of times they're not able to find a job right now.
They're underemployed, right?
Yep, they're underemployed. They have the degree and they have the debt, but they can't find a job.
So, well, here's the problem that I've seen, and certainly applies to what we're talking about. It seems like we're saying, yeah, in many cases, you can at least get a good part of what your education would be outside of college, especially with online learning these days. But how many employers out there look at that experience with an open enough eye to say, you know what, yeah, you've done this, that, and the other thing that's equivalent to somebody with a degree? Because I think for a lot of jobs these days, that degree is a gatekeeper. If you don't have it on your resume, next, they look for those certifications. So it's people are just, they go out there because they're told they need a degree, and to some degree that plays out.
Yeah, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a degree, like a 4-year degree, I guess. I mean, we talked earlier about the associate's degree, or if there's like a certification you can get, or some sort of, I mean, they want the proof. They want the proof that you've been through a program, whether you're learning to drive a truck so you can get your CDL so that you can make $50,000 a year as a truck driver, or whether you're, doing a 9-month program to be a dental hygienist. Is that still a 9-month program? I should probably check. But, whatever you're doing, they want to see that proof, as Glenn was saying. I mean, even if it's not a 4-year degree, if you're going to get hired for a good job, you have to have some sort of piece of paper that I guess they say validates you.
As the least educated person in this group, I have a 2-year.
The smartest, then.
Yeah, probably the smartest.
I've got a 2-year diploma in business administration and marketing, and it's a foot in the door with a lot of companies, and as you build up experience, a lot of those companies are willing to pay for you to take university classes after the fact, or get a designation in the case of finance. No, I haven't had any interest in that because I prefer doing entrepreneurial stuff with my spare time and not classes. But it's a good way that might help people afford to kind of continue. Like, people have gotten degrees, and a lot of people have gotten designations after they've come to a company, and then the company pays for it.
That's a good point. If you can find a job with a company that has that sort of program, and there are a lot out there, you can certainly get a good degree. I mean, a good education. I mean, it's not just your bachelor's. You could get a master's on top of that, as well as all sorts of different certifications on a company bill. I mean, sometimes you become something of an indentured slave to the company when you go that route, depending on where you are, because you have to say, I'm going to stay here for X amount of years afterwards. But that is a cheaper option if you can get into it.
Like, I don't know, in Canada, the evidence, and I wasn't too surprised by Peter's stats of underemployment, because again, when I was looking up the book, again, you can't just label all of university or college with the same brush, because obviously we talked about the STEM fields, we talked about a little bit like medical fields, but really I think where we're going in terms of post-secondary education in Canada, and I think the US in most regions is going to get there too, is ultimately employers are looking for an intersection of theory-based and practical-based credentials, and I think if we're talking about return on investment and value for your dollar, things like co-op programs, things where technical colleges and universities have come together to create a program, those kids have almost a 100% employment rate, and they're often market-driven. They step right into a job, and it's in their field, usually for quite a good wage, especially if you're willing to move to an area that has a calling for that. And I just think that those sort of co-op programs are able to stay agile and adjust to market way better than the traditional four-year schools are.
And actually here, one of the big things here is called concurrent enrollment, where high school students can actually take college courses, take credit for college courses, but they don't have to pay the same amount. It's like $30 a credit or something like ridiculous. So I mean, I've seen high school students who, you know, they're graduating high school and they start out college with, you know, they've got 2 years under their belt. They can have an associate's degree, and they can decide to keep their associate's degree and go home, well, go get a job, or they can, you know, continue on school and they're already half done, and they've graduated college and they're half done. And so, I mean, I think that's another kind of way, if you want to go that four-year degree route, to look and see, you know, what programs are available, because, you know, and then the other thing is the advanced placement. I mean, you can test out at some classes too to kind of speed up your progression through college.
Those are great programs, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut right in just because I have a super relevant example as a high school teacher. I had a student graduate last year because we have this great thing. We're so hard up for skilled labor that anything trades-based, we will actually pay you. The government of Manitoba will pay you as a grade 10, 11, 12 student to earn high school credits, and at the same time, you will earn hours towards your apprenticeship. I had a student last year graduate with a machining degree, had a brand new truck because he was working like 30 to 40 hours a week. He challenged his exam the day he turned 18. So before he graduated, he was a level 1 machining apprentice with 1,000 hours in, earning over $28 an hour as an 18-year-old guy.
That's pretty nice. So is it that would you say colleges, even though they're giving educations and they're giving degrees and they're giving courses, are they just not preparing kids for the jobs that are out there? There's not enough maybe speak between the companies that are giving the jobs and the universities that are giving the education. So there's just, you know, like you said, if you go to a good trade school here, you know, there's the promise of employment assistance, like they'll try to help you find a job. And a lot of universities do have that. And they probably have relationships with a lot of different companies, but it would seem like you wouldn't necessarily have the skills to get you to slot into that specific job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the problem with a lot of the colleges is that they're not really preparing a lot of the students for the workforce. There was a study I found on The Economist that asked graduates if they felt they were prepared for a job in their field, and only half the graduates said they were prepared for that. And only 39% of the managers that they interviewed felt that students were ready for the workforce. They said that students weren't able to write clearly or organize their time sensibly. So, I mean, there was a real disconnect with that. And it looks like on that same study, they said that there's 4 million jobs that are unfilled just because job seekers are lacking the skills that the employers need.
So what you're saying is we need more communications and English majors. Is that what
Colleges and universities would tell you, though, that that's not their problem. They're not there to prepare people for the workforce. And most of them are right up front about that. They're there to develop well-rounded citizens, deeper thinkers, et cetera, et cetera. They are not there. They're just a service. And so really, I think, to me, they're not going to change. Like, their livelihood depends on that. I think high school programs have to do a way better job of explaining the job market and explaining post-secondary options that are growing increasingly complex.
Yeah.
So college comes down to it's not just where you go to college, but where you've gone to high school as well, as far as your opportunities.
Well, I don't know about where you've gone to high school specifically, but I think part of the kind of trap we've fallen into as a society is we've said everybody has to go to college.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. Everybody has to go to college. Everybody has to get a 4-year degree. When really, not everybody, that works for everybody. And we've kind of gotten away from what Kyle points out is of the skilled labor. And so I think part of that is not so much, where you go to high school, but what sort of options are you being told about while you're in high school? I mean, here in the U.S., it's almost universally college prep. And I know when I lived in Europe for a little bit, they had kind of a different track you could take. You could take a trade track in high school and learn skilled labor, learn a marketable skill, do an apprenticeship, and still graduate from high school and go through that. And there are a few places where you can find apprenticeship programs here in the U.S., but they're few and far between. And we've kind of moved away from that kind of vocational, skilled trades kind of mentality, and that's part of the reason those jobs are probably paying well now because there aren't very many people to do them. And so I think it's more about saying, well, here are the options, and saying as a society, we don't all have to get a 4-year degree. It doesn't make sense for everybody to get a 4-year degree.
Well, here's some food for thought, and I get a lot of hate mail from teachers. Every single individual in a school, well, I shouldn't say every, 98% of them have the exact same education, and it's a 4-year degree. So all the people that are giving job advice, all your guidance counselors, all your teachers, all those people in the school system, all went through the exact same post-secondary system. So it's not really a mystery to me why we have misinformation going on to 17 and 19-year-olds.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that point you guys have made already about how it needs to be an option for a lot of people, a lot of kids graduating to go into trades. It almost has kind of a stigma nowadays where if you don't go to a 4-year university and get a degree that way, then you're not as good for some reason. Whereas I think a lot of kids could do great work working in some sort of a trade, and a plumber or what have you. And I think with the rising cost of college these days, it really should be an option that a lot of them are considering. The cost of university per student since 1983 has risen up by almost 5 times the rate of inflation here in the U.S. I mean, that's crazy. It's the cost of school is going up so fast, and financial aid is so available for students to get. It's increased so much since the 70s. If you want financial aid, you can pretty much get it. So with all that readily available money, students are saying, hey, why not? I can get this money, I'll pay it back later, and I'll get a degree. When a lot of them, I think, really should be considering maybe a 2-year degree or going into a trade or something along those lines. And there really shouldn't be a stigma that's associated with that.
I agree. It's the blue collar versus white collar attitude. In the U.S., I guess the stereotype is it's the blue-collar worker who kind of worked his butt off so that he could afford to send his kids to college so that they could be the white-collar workers. But maybe we've got to this super saturated economy now where there just aren't enough of those blue-collar people or workers to fill those jobs. And it's become this supply-demand where, yeah, you can do very well if you have a job like that, a more of a trade type of job.
I pay my plumber $90 an hour.
Yeah.
was the last time your office worker made $90 an hour, right?
Well, and really what we're seeing is with a lot of these skilled labor jobs, they're really like very light blue collar. Like you have to have a pretty high degree of technological proficiency. It's not like yesteryear where like anyone can become a mechanic just working on cars with their dad. Mm-hmm. So really it's this interesting cross section. Our shops teacher at school complains all the time that kids that want to come into carpentry think they're just going to go in there and pound nails, and then when they can't read blueprints, they're just shocked that the job requires stuff like that. So it's this modern economy that it is a knowledge economy, but it's a very niche skill knowledge economy, I think.
Yeah, so even the trades have become a lot tougher and a lot more knowledge intensive.
Yeah.
And I think you make a good point about, kind of the niche kind of thing. I mean, I remember, 30, 40 years ago, you could just graduate with any random 4-year degree and get a good job. It didn't matter whether your degree matched what you were doing. You just had to have the degree. And now we're a much more specialized society. We want you to be specifically certified on this forklift. If you're, you have to be certified to run heavy machinery if you're going to work in construction. So you may not need a degree, but you need to be certified to run this machinery. And so it really is a lot of specialized knowledge, and knowing what your specialty is going to be. I mean, you can't just graduate with a general English degree and go do whatever,
So this leads me to think, should more kids just wait before they go into college? I mean, there's got to be a stat somewhere saying, the average student changes majors X amount of times. What kid goes from day one of college and graduates with that same major? We go in, do we get the degree because we're supposed to get a degree? But, should we take off time between high school and college, get some type of work experience, life experience, figure out what we want, and then you could jump into college with a little bit more of an idea of what you're looking for?
I think they should offer those options in high school so that kids have a chance to do something more than just college prep. I mean, that's here in the U.S.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of kids really should consider if they don't have a plan and they don't know exactly what they're going to do, don't immediately go and spend $50 to $100K on an education that you're not even sure if you're going to need. Make a plan, try to figure out what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do, take some time off, go through some of those free college courses that we mentioned earlier. Find some things that interest you, something that maybe you can be passionate about and that's worth spending the money on, and that will possibly have a decent salary at the end of it. So.
Yeah, before you commit to a university program, and again, I'm blatantly ripping off a guy by the name of Ken Coates who wrote the book What to Consider When Considering University. I don't want to plagiarize here since we're talking about post-secondary. If you don't like reading and you're not a curious person, don't go to a 4-year degree program. You're not going to enjoy it. The professors are not going to like you. You're going to come out of it with a C GPA, and you're not going to remember 98% of your lectures. So if you're not curious about the topic you're taking, don't do it. Like it's very simple. No one's going to get anything out of that, and you're going to waste taxpayers' money too if you're in Canada because they're paying for 2/3 of the course.
So basically, we're all saying you should have at least some guidance when you're going into college. Like, what do you want to take? Where do you want to go with this? What do you want to finish up with? Agreed?
Yeah.
Disagreed?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
So
I was going to go back to the point back to what Kyle was just saying. If you don't like to read and you're not interested in anything, don't go to school. I was going back to one of these studies. It said almost a third of students these days don't take any courses that involve more than 40 pages of reading over an entire term. And students are spending measurably less time studying and more time on recreation while they're in school. So that a lot of the time they're goofing off. They're not doing a whole lot while they're in school. So that tells me, just there are a lot of people that are just there because that's what you're supposed to do. They're not there for any reason that they're passionate about or anything like that. So
it sounds to me like that with everything we're discussing, we're approaching something of a crossroads in college and universities that we're close to a better ideal where I think people can go more into trades. They will be able to do more things online. They'll be able to do more independent study, but we're just not there yet where what's out there matches the workforce yet.
Yeah, and we just got to do a better job of having a more efficient market. Like, we just have to get the information to people, and I think things will even out on their own. If we can just do a good job of getting information to young people and their parents about what the job market looks like and all the options that are out there to combat all these myths about, like, somehow getting dirt under your nails makes you a bad person, when really that dirt is probably from the wads of cash you have that the university grad does not. I think the free market will fix a lot of that. But we're doing a terrible job of getting the proper information, both regionally, like geographically, and in terms of job demand, period.
So what are we saying? Is college worth it?
It can be. It depends on your personal financial situation.
I think what we're saying still is, on average, it probably is still a person's best bet. Some sort of education. It could be trade, it could be a 4-year degree, it could be a master's degree. You're probably more better off getting an education.
Back to school with you.
I'm not an English major. You're probably better off getting some degree than you are not. Certainly the statistics seem to show that. But it's not for everyone, and it shouldn't be your first go-to instinct that you have to get a degree. Maybe you're better off thinking about what your career could be or what you want it to be, where your passions lie, what school you're going to that will give you a return on investment. I think the average person going to a university doesn't even think about the return on investment. I'm going to school for this degree and I'll go out, I'll get a job, but they don't think about what it's going to actually pay off. A lot of times you go on a mom and dad's buck to start at least, so you're certainly not thinking about it. So they need to maybe get educated on that as well before college. But for the most part, college is still worth it. Agreed?
Yep.
Sure.
Agreed. Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Kyle,
So with that,
Kyle doesn't look sure about that.
Doesn't want to be the lone one out there disagreeing with everybody else.
And it's funny because I'm a few credit hours short of getting a 3rd degree, and I'm always the one that's like, "Oh, don't get degrees." Conspiracy.
with that, let's wrap up. Thank you guys for another great episode of the Money Mastermind Show, and thank you for everybody that's watching. As always, if you have any questions, please hit us up on our Google Plus page, on our Twitter, on our website. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know any questions you have, any concerns, anything following up on an episode. Until next week, be good with your money, and we'll see you then. Good night, guys.
Night.
Night.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Google+.